Okay, so like definitely my considering option right now, definitely for like even at this point I'm only prepping for like nodes like system as well as like nodes and definitely prepping for tempo even at this point from this point on to like instead of acknowledging knowing for like depicting solid like instead of like acknowledging your like on like them only straight away decide looking down on like so it's like it's another parameter right so like them totally like totally or not accepting like the reality that like no one has like worked hard and like has got a whole lot stronger built themselves and a whole lot stronger over the years and they at present was able to like offer and defeat so like I was like acknowledging that like I'm thinking definitely like both nodes stuff as well as like nodes and things like from this point on like looking thoroughly down on and that solid is like definitely and like them probably that from this point on like only like calling nodes and calling solid as that absolute advancement to like the silver family so like definitely from this point on I'm talking that due to that goal defeating solid from this point on so different like solid to like go through that similar kind of like situation that uh no one has gone through in some backstory of that of being judged by like the Sugar just like the scenario that so definitely like noted as well as that like just around the terms went on with the of like the mindset that basically that solid for achieving all confidence and basically was like and Newton's like all confident that he was like for the years like he totally that he kept slacking off and basically praying working hard on his like strength and powers and slacked on his left brain, and that was what eventually a thousand had resulted in that solid music to that to see along the lines of straight of like a straight up and check that I'm looking that knows it as well as like no just stuff when he was going on with taking that scenario that and they were like acknowledging that knows that growth is going to be like the last thing that they would want due to like the extreme ego as well might be like that with the viewers language. So like them upper on the point on like straight away some like the player was like instantly like the moment they would be finding out about like sorry losing to like now like at that point I look at their initial reaction would be initial reaction of both nervous as well as like probably that of like an absolute shock but like I'm looking like that point is a constant stereotype they're extremely words stereotype assuming that they was not to be that no one having grown a whole lot stronger than in like the past, but have totally been basically like solid flattening off and basically getting weaker and not training hard and getting weaker all right. To get on the lines of like that doesn't bad like I'm starting to find like no as well as like not like this start with the stage away take this like in the scenario that I need to go through again in the case of like electoral like like the battle against that but like even though you know CPS as electoral like I'm putting that lead it will just be like the way font like the even without that like relying on like the power of like like fate spirit like the fact that defeated Electora and so feel like Electora that still like strong up that Electora and like basically he couldn't just give that action of like again that and stuff is looking at certain maybe so basically there is something in that inspiring Electora to but like it is also that numerous words that like the dialogue that even those character are well fighting character that like fights for his own brain those words that like welcome to pick up in it would be like inspiring Alcora to like the point of like Alcora having that actually change in like Alcora mindset and basically from this point on up from that Alcora not only becoming at that as from that as the great bonus from this with like but also like see as that as this friendly as this rival that like Alcora actually from that thing until this point wanted to that totally achieve like the dream work hard and work train hard to get stronger to is like the dreams of like Indian families like that it's similar to on this point on this point that would be changing up that goal of that Alexandra and this point on to inspiring Alexandra is like the scenario that like Alexandra from this point on like especially like starting to like train hard and work towards like achieving his own goals and not trying to like see somebody else's goal. is like the scenario that's like the shifting like mindset that I'm doing like Alexandra on point of view of like it happening like this like new absolute goal of is like Alexandra will be sitting at the zone absolute goal to be most likely to work hard with that absolute goal to probably eventually surpass uh, have that absolutely that again that you know in the future I fully can do that a surpass you know and after doing that like for like kind of to that then challenge that advance to that a battle and basically in that battle for like Alexandra to like eventually be able to like work for and defeat and surpass that we surpass like even like the stuck at the advantage of like the golden to whom electoral to list up towards like this. That way for the electoral to like eventually pick up as like when become like the squad captain. Again like the squad captain position of like the golden goal. Before you know will be along the lines of that this like and this like absolute goal on this point on like and that and this absolute system goal that and like from this point on like they like electoral will be setting is definitely like the scenario that and also definitely a fundamental mention of bringing expectations of solid like point on like solid desperately as something to like convince like solid like system as well as like notice that they really because not due to that solid having lack of like training or getting weak over the years, but was definitely due to that having grown a whole lot stronger over the years. Would be along the lines like solid desperately right like convince that no, sir, as well as that like stuff, but like they will be about the things to like in a ballistic manner, maybe say a lot of things to like really to have not even take it at all to like the words of that sort. And like that way like seeing the friends who are sort of going through like the very same kind of like backstory situation that like no one has been through like the past and basically at that point like solid going to be feeling desperate for that absolute acknowledgement by the Silva family, which at that point like would think suddenly losing that is like the scenario that is like solid definitely wouldn't be able to like handle it so solid and will be desperate to get back that acknowledgement and validation and role of like the Silva family. So like with that as well goal like and that what solid like training has really have reflect the enough that and that as a single goal to that as soon as possible be able to that surpass knowing through a result and that we can appreciate knowing and that to get that pre-approval and validation type of things to that specific will be along the lines of the frame that so it will be absolutely for this like the scenario that are of like the situation from it so it's like the scenarios that I'm doing. So that at this point, like the situation is really reaching like the point where like maybe solid like would be eventually getting that feeling of like he has like so his like training like his training like can probably feeling of like he has finally one of strong enough to like have that real battle against like no one would be along the lines of like an eventual scenario so, of like a point where like solid is reaching and like as solid would be searching for like no to like have that real battle against no one like and basically at that point that like putting that solid what's all into the running into the most like situation where like no one will be having that next absolute ultimate battle which will be most likely against like no one's like sister just like the scenario like and so like at that point like when solid will be searching for like no one and finally finding no one like at that point solid switch off is like witnessing that no one having this like ultimate battle against like solid and no one's like system like the scenario that yeah in that bad language point like no one would be spending her way into like integer or your or antiquity like solid that I know it's like system it's like the scenario that I'm different and even at that point I'm definitely know the level so this even at that point would be shocked at like the shocked on finding out like it's not really solid but like it's like stuff as well as enough to like know because like the flavor of like solid like the stuff might be a whole lot stronger, especially strong that solid might be like that which is the element. So definitely so even though the initial reaction and even that point I'm sort of thing would be most likely not in getting shocked that like no one has also little that has also as well. Still even at that point like no as well straight away like was like seeing it to work made probably so different. And also as well straight away would be of like super mindset and would be straight away will be looking down on both solid as well as like the selective as well. as like being absolutely weak, seeing like the reason and like it not being due to that no one have hold up strong or like use that doesn't happen there. So I believe that way that and that is like so that I believe the pain and like the suffering that no one had that gone through in her past in that note that story and like eventually that got solid not only solid but like both no like stressful going through eventually in like the future of that basically of that like whole situation of like looking down by the Silva family that situation of and both solid as well as like no situation we doing it with the going through is like person of and that's eventually in that where the things on that in that that would actually find that to like happen to be like versus like no that in which like no since we have struggling her way into that thinking and definitely in that definitely is like no one is not likely would be struggling against like an absolute front of black and they are for like by the like the decade of like uh, solid as well as like no like even though like no so would be said we are would be said we are saying that because of the extent being weak and not able to like more having a strong like and still certainly that side of like within like and also that will be also feeling insecure of like the possibility of like basically him being next to get defeated by no one that's uh, that might be that fear as well that might exist within that no one from that point on. It's also like about the director. So like no so from that point on that will be training extra hard and to be like even sharpening up his like skills and powers even way more and training even extra hard is like another. So like in that way, one like adjustment things in like that ultimate balance between like usually knows it as well as like known with the happening, which so people think maybe also is being a scenario where like maybe feeling disturbed due to that solid as well as like just getting defeated by that maybe like after all this training and like no self would be feeling absolutely confident like this maybe before being a scenario where like in like some case like maybe being like out of the blue one day like no self will be showing up in front of like knowing and like chanting to that ultimate that it was that cost because of that that disturbance possibly maybe created that simple at that point. I think that's really wanting to like go himself that like culture himself that like okay believes like only fight that is used. It's because of like this Mexican being big and not being to like not due to like no one having the response. So like that battle I'm given like no one this is struggling yet like eventually in during that battle as like no they be about to get defeated by now so like context scenario being like no like totally awakening some sort of like alternate power and using that power like no like using some like an artificial attack which would be what that would be for an defeated like no so it's like this scenario that I'm looking for so that that thing that I put is shock and basically that way like no sense left to go getting crushed is like it's enough that I was going and in that battle I'm definitely both solid as well as like no it's like sister would be in attendance like so as well as most likely no self would be totally it would be under the like the scenario to be like it would be no self that would be like falling stuff like solid as well as like just like system to totally show to this like that ground like nothing would be facing off against like no one and basically to show them that basically it's to show them that it was from uh and to show them how huge they were that like they have lost to like someone as a community as like along the lines and like solid would be telling them and that way like when it was like it was like to be no one would be getting no and the that they need as like among like the crowd that will be witnessing that battle and with that as well as like like this person of that movie which like scenario. So like that could be of like notion by no resemble any of that event happening like how we shocking and like strong like the huge ego of like notion as well. It's like the scenario setup. And then most likely at that point like no one will be most likely after repeating as soon after like repeating that novel and like once like making the speech to like not only himself but also to like solid as well as like the sister as well, which like at that point only at that point like that would be the use like get through to that is that through her words it's like the scenario side of it. So like at that point I'm looking at them totally feeling absolutely guilty and regretful for like to in that time like the past like what time having created like having this down on like and created no in such poor manner and everything. it would be along the lines of that I would kill that then the three siblings of that Noel would be stealing that in front of the same door is like Noel, which like the scenario. Yeah, like I'm still like not definitely not from the in or anything, but like Noel would be definitely at that point would be telling them about like the importance of like their bond like the bond of like family, like siblings, and like if they stick together, like they do, how much like valuable and that if they stick together and work together, like as like a team, like how much like social and valuable that like the collective strength that will be getting formed through that happy teamwork would be for like the for like the production of like the growth in the and like the growth of like the growth in the movie along the lines of that piece that like no one at that point after defeating Nozzles would be most likely it's like this scenario that I'm it was like I'm doing like at that point like definitely no one will be able to like that able to like get through to like novel as well as like as well as her sister as well as probably that that point like taken out of that. In that way like finally at that point like that actual genuine bond of like the sibling non like noble as well as like solid as well as like like or being getting formed only at that point is like the actual scenario that I'm looking over right and by the very end of it. And able to bring like from to the India at that point that like also to be finally accepting of that absolute potential of like the black holes that might make this part because due to that it being that by the it being that due to that solely the difference that like happened to like all happening while during like all of the course of like the duration of years while Noel was like far out and that got to go like the black hole squad like basically the Blackwood squad. So at that point, then would be the only realize that basically that like it was like the Blackwood squad that had like bring about all this change in like Noel and basically to the point of like no it's simply like basic no and everything. So definitely at that point I was on like not really solid as well as like like the stuff but like no sort as well like finally like realizing like that was potential. Uh, of like night squad and like and also feeling that aspect at that point towards like Yami as well. Due to like Yami being like squad kind of affected like Blackwood squad and basically send that and having like the stuff like the knowledge to send that and while knowing to up to like the point of like stuff or something like that of fighting that knowledge would be at that point. But like the eventual possible scenario that I'm looking at and at only at that point is when I was becoming like even though also like will be letting go of such like so full of himself attitude and basically not just along with that solid along with that not like that the three of them that totally along with like the three of them that totally hanging out along with like noise and like the black group with that and like that absolute bond of like friendship being formed between all of them and like Yam as well as like also finding it's like the scenario that I'm looking at the point I'm not very also like the name and understand right now that basically even if like Charlie being so extremely madly in love and such with like I'm probably expecting for like 70% of the scenario where like in actuality like even to like the person like I'm like whom the person do not physically having that all that influence towards might be definitely him also and not Charlie might be that actually introduced the famous phrase. So that we have to bring like him also initially like the Pinto technique going through like that after heartbreak kind of like a situation once like being well we shockingly realizing that like it's like knows that like has stuff genuinely have a feeling towards will be along the lines and the sort of thing that the big shockingly finding out in like the things that and I'm also thinking maybe for like a scenario where like in like the very recent days of like an intense battle, a serious intense battle like happening between like Mimosa and like Noel for like after I was completely credits. So like an actual serious battle, but like I'm like doing that hard fight that we must already having, which according to my different only having like the temperature on finding out that like after they really now that but like the scenario that so like at that point I'm different like Mimosa not being able to like accept that or like handle that. So definitely I'm doing that actually see the and a race towards like no which like would be happening with like Mimosa at that point I'm different that Mimosa after that absolute also at that point, like with that absolute seriousness, like it was like to totally or forensic with like no and that way to like tell no that basically that as by then would have reached like exceptional seeing the exceptional level for strength stability frame. So like at that point like Mimosa would be with that absolute praise of like Gen Z towards like no would be totally planning on like basically seriously having that against like one of those young battle against like no which like neither Aston or none of like was so or or anyone would be even aware of this like that intense battle between like Mimosa and Noel happiness like this not that so like Mimosa that absolutely seriousness when Noel would be alone by herself like would be showing up in front of like Noel and challenging Noel to this like ultimate one was done battle and this Mimosa would be most likely telling Noel that basically about like basically like Noel being absolutely not deserving for like Asta. And I was looking at that when maybe Mimosa like totally trying to like bring down like the thriller trying to like bring down like Noel's like moral and confidence by most likely telling Noel that Noel even at that point in like percentage of might still be having like to a certain extent still issues with like control of match. So like definitely Mimosa totally is mocking Noel and basically that realistic share like is really happening perfection like this like what's the narrative that is. So yeah, Mimosa would be at that point of installing that like someone who still can't control magic is like as that's a better than that like someone like me will be along the lines like currently telling so like that host dialogue hurtful dialogue from like would be this from that being that I'm shocked for like and like them having that intense quarrel between them and like at that point like number would be like the one that would be challenging and would be most likely with white challenging Noel like Mimosa, most likely telling Noel that if Black Noel that if Black Noel loses to Black Mimosa in that battle that then that means Black Noel is like not even strong enough to be deserving of like some protection and stuff. To be along the line like and like Noel and that would probably mean that like Noel is like totally extremely weak and would only be like tracking down Nazca as like progress and basically like would be along the lines and like Mimosa would be telling why challenging to like argument Lamapun Valley and like I'm just like fighting Mimosa with that actually seriously with that actually would like would be prove that like she's like stronger than Mimosa and it's like only deserving of like as that would be along the lines like would be with that actually seriousness that would be fighting that intense balance against like versus that personality that so like that like I'm like interior something in like even though initially when getting started against like was like or was like or spent like I'm like would be eventually ending up with like still spawning her way into like initially or any piece was like personality and that being such an absolute shock to like Mimosa just like personality so like that lead like so like the condition of that battle between like Mimosa and Noel is like Mimosa might have set up would be if like Noel loses to like Mimosa like Noel would have to like give up on Hashtag give up Hashtag to like Mimosa would be along the line like Mimosa would be making as like the condition of that battle. So yeah like once like Noel will be winning that battle so we listen to like Noel like and that being that absolute shock and like so at that point only having that absolute feeling of like pain of like heartbreak and everything of like having to like give up as that to lack and all just like the scenario that I'm supposed to and at that point I was like after like defeating Mimosa like and like Mimosa maybe like started to tear up and maybe like Noel feeling bad for like Mimosa as well and then like Noel trying to like comfort Mimosa but like Mimosa won't be like saying that Mimosa totally running away from that location like after listening to like Noel is like listen after that episode and I'm also feeling like was already going all by herself, like sitting somewhere all by herself and going for that heartbreak. And like the crying is like the scenario. And in the, at that point that I was like, would be most likely showing up towards like Mimosa. And like it was only at that point that I was like, we finally gaining like the getting that courage to like like feelings towards like feelings of like affection towards like Mimosa, which like descend from all the way from this point to like even that point, like the computer would be most likely having that might have been so extremely afraid to like express to so might be like the case like the possibility that I'm so like at that only at that point the computer like getting that courage to like express his feelings of to like and like at that point while crying like maybe getting this like absolute next shock of like basically of like this realization which like only at that point you realize that like then that like had like these feelings of addiction towards like there's like things scenario that happening. that shot probably going to be something in like probably uh, not saying anything back to like at that point is like the once like only just into like reading down into like the places in Africa and Mimosa like probably would be from that point on would be seriously thinking about like about like all the times that like they have Mimosa have spent together with like around the option as like like goes and all and everything. So definitely after like think about a lot like Mimosa finally would be running back to like and would be actually things like so like like so that with like just scenario so like that is like the distinctive scenario or like and something like that way once like in like relationships or once like at the end it will be actually in like a relationship like at that point like like it will be also endure that in like a relationship and like definitely definitely I'm considering like Charlie only at that point like finding out that basically actually had like things of other controls like and that at that point actually Charlie as well turned out a heartbreak. But like I'm like by then like I'm definitely the most likely seen that some uh, a member from like the cognitive management squad who might have had like that absolute feeling of like rush and like absolute opposition towards like sharpness. Even before that is like the scenario and that gap like I'm like most likely maybe that gap would be second. It's also like about the level. So like by then like in like the same reason like I'm like second without multiple times like or like sharpness but like uh, while expressing like feelings of opposition towards like sharpness while each and every single time like Charmy might have up and every time straight away appreciated with prediction. Second, like most likely not even not like magical attacks against like Sergey to like chase Sergey away from her. Might have been like a game friends. So that way actually like can be like would be once like Mocha would be accepting love like and that point I'm looking for that. So those Charmy would be very good at heartbreak like I'm saying like eventually like Charmy as well as like Seke is no one with the current beauty in many in that way. Like the variants in the like is the user and Japanese about this thing. And my also the clear differential right now is definitely for like usually by the time like in like the organization by the time like casting as well as like things will be making it towards like and reaching like the semi-finals like and definitely putting like that definitely eventually happens like the scenario that and at that point I was like King Augustus won't able to like take it anymore. Seeing like witnessing like sort of like Asta and like I'm looking like at that point wouldn't be able to like take it anymore that like and going through the extreme extent of like like getting like the opposite team that like both as the team as well as like seeing it facing off against in like the semi-finals like I'm like most likely Augustus like secretly giving some sort of like a magical item used to like probably put like both Aztec as well as like in like in like a drowsy like state and that way to have like Aztec as well as Venus like performance get affected in like the semi-finals and that way for like both Aztec team as well as like teams to like get eliminated in like the semi-finals because like the last thing that like I think understood might be at that point would be wanting is like the scenario that actually would be for like either Aztec or like teams to like end up becoming like the winners of like the so in like the first to end up in like that first place in like the Royal Knight exam tournament would be the last thing that King of Discuss would be wanting to like to totally. So that way I'm going to run like the strategy that like the realistic strategy that of stuff would be most likely using would be most likely adding in like such kind of like additives to like most likely for like just like I'm going to run like most likely other this would be sending one of the black butler would be like having like food items with them with like the additives in it like and like very in terms of offering is like butler to like give that food item to like specifically as well as like and like definitely want like that partner who will bring that food item that is bring that and like as then you asking like from whom it is like bring like really like the partner is using exactly accordingly and to that what team understood would outline and really like think like the partner would be not like telling us then that really understands is like extremely impressed with like hashtag so that like like performance until that point in like them reaching like the semi-final. So that progress in like the organization that like in other perspectives, please given the these like items as like as like a token of just like appreciation to like as time. So like exactly like how at person like we accepted like food item from that chat solely due to the fact of like wanting to like stock backs was like another for like the piece of that is in like the financial channel or the food industry at that point it would industry as the alone that will be falling for that track of like other stuff but like that the thing that will like stock is like another that would be falling for that track and both as kind that food item and that will like different that both as that as well as like is struggling in like the semi-final match in like the organization like to navigate. But like I'm like it will be like saying that will be that's probably even more and like the major load of like the of that has of like the of like the battle will be on like noise like shoulder in like the semi-final battle of like Spain was like Naruto. So it was like in like when it comes to like after Spain but still like the fake stuff. So like my consideration as well like the fake stuff in a holistic manner will be totally getting insane by Asta in this like Rousey like state and combating in the front of like an crowd. It's like in the scenario that I'm going to so like the fake stuff would be only surprised at that point and basically yeah, like I'm referring like at that point from like papers, the only thing that we believe like he will be as usual he will be most like definitely be able to then out front of the manner like the fix up from the thing that like as usual he will be able to like easily close through like the semi-final battle as well as like all the previous battles in like the organization. But like I'm referring that semi-final battle of like the fake up and as the scene would be most likely against like the squad captain team is like scenario that everything. So like definitely the fake up as usual will be totally would be think that like he'll easily able to book that battle. But like I'm definitely the fake up like that process of like basis to be that parents to a certain extent in that battle against the race, just like with maps that everything. So like definitely unlike usually like able to conduct the pace of definitely not being able to go through like semi event match because definitely Ringo will bring out all of his like for the semester strength into that battle and like definitely Ringo will be that would have by then like thoroughly observed and thoroughly notes and thoroughly observed like the exceptional skills and powers of like the face of as like through black has and like the big like through the through the online system until reaching like the events like session or therapy. So like a real might out of the see know and basically see the paper as like one of like that ultimate target that it has to like really bring down such like right on the line as like what happened. It's definitely my brain so like definitely bring that way when music like has everything and I'm like things not going as smoothly as like the faces with the thing and definitely the pictures at that point will be starting to like usually it's the that performance reaching a point of the pictures reaching a point where like the pictures being started like with we had like as the by this side like as to provide help and like actually wishing like Asta was not in like across the United States in that it was like the scenario like basically his performance like totally eventually resulting in like fakes wishing for like Asta's help. It's like the scenario that yet like I'm doing like the pictures initially somehow managing to like managing to like pull through and like struggle to a certain extent and basically still eventually managing to like totally like trick even well, I'm just bringing you more like it to trick and mindless strategies that like the picture would be even even at that point of like semi-final battle against like a team that I'm looking that the picture would be probably managing to like secretly and like probably win like that semi-final battle while throughout the entire trip like that last would be semi like crossing like status like in the scenario that but in the case of that, knowing Spain and that, throughout the entire trip, the battle being in that trophy like state, while like the entire trip, the load would be on like, uh, mostly on like noise because like the train man's member, even though it would be having like it's like power of it's like mushroom magic and everything, like still I'm whispering like that should definitely be enough at all for like them with like a drowsy, to be able to like defeat like opponent team in like the semifinal like scenario that on that way like the majority of like it will be at least in that direction would be on the attack and like the claim like it will be that train man's member who will be most likely holding on to like still end up with like it will be like them using that strategy where uh, like that team member that Freeman's member will be like holding on to like while holding on to the still like along with like no one will be going in on that like along with like no one is like looking after so definitely it would be like that Freeman's member will be like totally having to like playing the role of like before focusing on like keeping like the to protect at state so that like uh, so that like no one could like solely focus on like attack on like just focusing on like destroying like the rest of like opportunities even while there will be like it will be like trying to be like a three versus two kind of like battle with like in like kind of like so like they are like no one's still struggling seriously trying to like struggle. We are like seriously struggling our way to like easily managing to like I don't think destroy like the still of next opportunity, which might be only happening at like an extremely critical situation where like the still of technology would be about to get destroyed by like the opposite thing. So like at that like at that big last second like I'm given like that ability and that sprint need to win like only resulting in like maybe learning any magic attack as like also like about that with that magic attack like remotely managing to like basically send up some sort of like a powerful new kind of like attack which is like knowing and that attack magical attack and trying to be extremely fast kind of like an attack as well like the scenario that is what ways it extremely fast kind of like attack but which like no would be totally would be managing to like barely managing to like destroy the still up like the opponent team in time just before like opponent team will be destroying like still up like no actually it's like the scenario that I'm just all like and making them in that way like once like will be waking up from such like drowsy like state like at that point till from like no one will be fuming at like you know for like being in that drowsy like state is like the scenario that and the moment be waking up just straight away assume waking up with that assumption that like happily with like just with the absence of like team would have definitely got eliminated from like the semi-finals will be along the lines like be waking up with like the thought of but like I'm just like getting that absolute shock and realization that like at that point even with like absence like with like no one as well as like the same match members like efforts alone that they had managed to like even win like the semi-finals and made it to like the finals, like the scenario there. And that being such an absolute shock for like and like at that point I'm just like we shortly are realizing the full extent of like the strain potential that lies within like is like the eventual possible scenario that I'm looking for this thing and like the construction right. Also, the minimum mentioned right now, as for like the brain man is member, like no one's been basically the reason for like him so badly wanting to like see no one as such like younger sister who might be definitely connected to a dark backstory, a dark sad and like painful backstory, secret backstory which might exist for like that brain man is member. Were like in that so like I put the mention for the like the symbol of like might have been like attacked by like the dimension of in one of the village and basically in like the walking of maybe in like one of those villages like I'm definitely uh like the home of like the payments might have been definitely remember the impression so like during that attack by like the managing them and different land the payments member might have lost his like parents yeah, like we might have struggled to say by like putting in all of his like power and strength, like we might have managed to like save all of his like siblings, but like I'm still like one of his like siblings that he might have not been able to like save, and that might have been his like younger sister, might have been the case certainly. So like and like he might have lost up right in front of it, and there might exist that absolute pain and suffering. Uh, and that trauma is connected to that like it within that most likely the praying man's member uh, even to the person and this might be like the actuality of like the reason for like him basically at present like this even while only having just met like no one in this like around like some they don't like him still so badly wanting to be like known that things might be connected to such a painful backstory of like the like praying man's guy and might be due to this all it might be like that to different situations like the possibilities that I'm expecting of the episode. So like I question my focus area and question I'm still like putting that maybe that way. So like this like praying man's member like the like ultimate goal might be to like get as strong as possible for him so that like he will be able to like get revenge on that on the entire of like the United Kingdom or like to that and not to like even break down like the entire of the United Kingdom but to like specifically target that specific Diamond Kingdom member who might have taken out his like who might have been like the reason for the his loss of his like elected setup. Definitely my priority to uh to uh to find it and basically to taking out might be with like brain management of like alternate road. Might be also the case definitely my friend. So that's definitely the different like most likely for that diamond kingdom members most likely needs to be. So like the flavor of premises and like the culture might have been lotus like that diamond kingdom like higher rank member or like general of living like by the name Lotus Moon like has been like the past like fought off against in like that dungeon like this him might have been like the culprit behind like the loss of like his brain members like stuff like that and that's that way Lotus might be with like brain members like ultimate target like take out like to have that to easily fight and take out like Lotus might be like and that will get revenge for his like stuff might be that most likely that the sprain management member that ultimate goal is that you and like sprain management member might be at the result of that like not for him to be able to do that like he will have to like reach the higher levels of the fight. Might be the case definitely might be there. So this might be that this sprain management members like ultimate goal is definitely my friend so right. So like a sort of the prevention only for like in the very instant future like I'm projecting a scenario where like this like sprain member like fighting attempting to like get revenge on like Lotus and having that ultimate villain's battle against like Lotus, but like I'm currently failing to like or and defeat like Lotus still almost like preparing base which is still managing to defeat the like prime management and that's the prime management of getting taken off by Lotus like the scenario that but like I'm once that will be happening exactly I'm preparing that fancy program would be showing up exactly because that's why like the scenario that I and definitely in that will be happening at that point so like between like Lotus and fancy program like I'm totally still thinking about the presentation that like in the very recent future it will be definitely fancy program that will be finally succeeding in like bringing down Lotus and basically taking out like change scenario. I don't know like meantime like and yeah but like what like Lotus will be getting defeated by fancy over like I'm definitely like Lotus focus like secret and still be winners flickering ways like would be like telling Phantom over that basically would be through more of like manipulation strategies against like Phantom over definitely due to like not definitely knowing like the book side of like Phantom over so like definitely not to be definitely after getting defeated by Phantom over would be definitely realistically attempting to like take Phantom over out along with him using some sort of like a self-destruction kind of like imagine just like the scenario while only him would be only putting on that fake acting as to like only while telling Phantom over to like pay him and basically that like he at least realized to like kids and everything will be along the lines like Lotus will be along the lines of like will be putting up that protecting while so Fanson will be able to take out Lotus like scenario that right and like that way Fanson will be only falling for that fact but like uh, at that point like I'm thinking would be totally most likely about to like actually like self-defense kind of like a powerful match attack but like at that point like still Phantom like probably at that even at that very last second still manages to like get away and like survive that powerful attack. Even though like certain extent of like injuries like still Phantom managing to survive like playing the scenario that and that way that is how I'm like usually don't be getting taken off is like the scenario that I'm in that way like I'm pro Phantom through the sound and like with like alternate goal uh, of like payments member would be like achieved through fancy program and that electric user is like an involvement system to the scenario that I'm listening to and of the reaction right now. This is like the human pension right now, especially for like the online system tournament. In total, I'm total thing might be having like a total of like four stages. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for. So that we have explained like after like stage one and stage two, like stage three would be most likely the semi-final stage, and like stage four would be most likely the point stage. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for. So definitely with like the battlefield itself, like changing after like the first stage itself, like I'm thinking that this will repeatedly happen even after like the second stage, as well will be forward. So like in like for like the semifinals, like I'm only fighting for like a totally different strategy and more challenging battlefield. Is like the scenario that I'm looking and for like the finals, I'm looking like three more challenging battlefield, which is set by in like a calculated manner by doing this according to like doing this is like plans and all might be like the it's like the scenario that I'm looking and definitely I'm looking like in like for like the finals final stage I'm covering like the battlefield I'm covering would be by if you are going to would be having like a lot of like what body area in like the battlefield is like scenario that which I'm totally covering like would be uh one thing that I'm totally covering like still even everything that like no one will be taking absolute advantage of all that water body to like eventually in that final show or final battle, which might be totally no one's teamwork is like at first place. Uh, and in that final battle, I'm totally covering eventually like I'm still remembering that it would be for to be like that would be like be focusing on like the pace of trend would be focusing on like stopping like the pace of so that like by then like would be thoroughly impressed with like knowing like achievements and performance in like throughout like the journey in like the role system until that point that like by then like would be placing that absolute constantly like knowing uh by herself like with just like the help of entertainment member like yes, being able to like defeat Asuka's team, defeat Asuka and like Asuka's team in the Royal Knight system, while would be focusing on like basically focusing on like just like the fate of member of like Asuka's team in like in so like it could be absolutely certain for like absolutely crucial and important for like to like ensure to like stop like the fate of members of like to track and like right up like the battle in that battle final battle like to straight away to like target like the Pacers member to ensure that the Pacers member doesn't cause any trouble to like the remaining members of like team. Uh, and that way like I'm wondering like the Pacers like often definitely would be 60 back in like the finals battle, which would be against like like the scenario that I'm in. So like thoroughly throughout like the battle would be succeeding in like obstructing like the Pacers regardless of whatever like strategy that like the Pacers would be using in that final battle to like get past and to make it towards like still up like state. Definitely no matter what our like career management strategy like the Pacers would be using like being able to like freeze through each and every single one of those and like really continuously managing to like keep like the Pacers in like kind of structured kind of like state so that like no one could like really do her best in like the final like the scenario that I'm in. That way like I feel like most likely there is a scenario to be like no one like only so the like fight going on and I'm maybe like for like the final battle like I'm thinking definitely there being a time limit for like the final battle the final battle of like the next tournament it's like the scenario that I was just so like as that time limit would be about to run off I'm sort of like the battle going extending all through was like the time limit is like the scenario that so like I was wondering like as like the time limit would be about to run off. Even at that point like neither of the things around for each of this like so like at that very last second I'm trying to when like no one most likely and I'm just going like though no one would be attempting to like destroy like still in like have this thing like I'm just definitely at that point of flavor like Mimosa would be doing it absolutely everything against like no one's like attacks and everything along with like maybe ask as well to supplement redemption because like the case of like the fake some so different like the fake while simultaneously while trying to like get fast like the fake would be also like in a realistic and extreme sizes manner like while Asta will be attempting like joking on the attack like destroy like crystal of like screen like I'm looking at the fake while simultaneously trying to get past would be also focusing on Asta and to like ensure that Asta doesn't make it to like the side of the third of like screen so that like as staff wouldn't get that absolute main spotlight of like this point like still perfect out like to ensure that doesn't happen and like the base of like scientifically while trying to get stuff would be also launching attacks at like Asta as well and to like keep Asta away from like making it to like the fabric of like change of interest like things also like doing scenario that way like I'm like step by no one eventually as like time would be able to run out like and like no one would be struggling against like Mimosa at that and then totally bring at that point like Mimosa as well as like no one would be only seeing this as like an absolute situation where like they have to like throw themselves in front of like Asuka so like also like yes but like that feeling and that desire will be automatically getting found within them it's like scenario that way like an intense battle between like Mimosa and no one would be happening while but like Asta would be probably focusing on like somehow managing to like get from the other side of like the top ring of like so that Asta can destroy like still of like Luna's team but like due to like the fake source, most likely to literally not be the fact that like as the not being able to solve also like a possible that that way like I'm like eventually as like time will be over the amount like and just like no one most likely taking advantage of all that water body that if being only at that point that no one would be realizing that basically of to like take advantage of that all that huge that quantity of that one in that battery. Until that point, I was like Noel launch all sorts of like what based attack, but like I'm just into like Mimosa's like powerfully plant-based powers like Mimosa easily being able to like stop and of course like Noel like what based like attacks like so also like giving it another that as well. But like I'm sort of much like Noel taking advantage of that all that huge what body quantity in that battlefield and like to launch like an ultimate tsunami kind of like an intense like sea dragon throw or like some sort of like a new intense like ultimate attack like while taking advantage of all that water in like the battlefield. At that point, like Mimosa not being able to like stop it and like using that attack like protein of like taking off like itself of that Mimosa's face. Is like eventual uh Mimosa and that's like team is like the into scenario where that I'm still thinking about the mission for like Noel's team most likely like season like to the trick in like the Royal Life exam. Yet like I'm looking like both Noel's team as well as the team definitely getting like each and every single member of like Noel's team but like including like the face of like Mimosa as well as like as the getting selected. Uh definitely among like other members like definitely as well as like Mimosa would also be getting selected. Okay, so that the right now, so like in like stage two battle, I'm looking right now, we must have for like almost like the lack of extremely cool and easy and the sort of like basically because like we must have bring will be right now go keep expecting for like cut for the like the curse to be for targeting Mimosa and basically we'll be attempting to like in the Mimosa in like the Royal Knights stage two for Knights between like after Sting and like Crush and Magma and Soul Sting like scenario that I'm so like Mimosa I'm totally going to straight away even before the battle begins with the straight away not of expecting Crush to like only target but like I'm just going naturally like I'm just not like the battle begins like definitely Crush would have even before the battle begins like I'm just like scenario to be like probably telling straight away telling his like plan to like sword as well as like magma, which will be most likely for like magma to like totally target Aztec and for like soul to like specifically target like Mimosa. And I'm just for like still like even that all the things he knows about like Mimosa as compared to like Venus and like maybe things to say that might trigger Mimosa and cause like Mimosa to like lose focus and control of magic like and because maybe going to that extreme extent of that saying and revealing all this to like magma as well as like soul at the same order for winning orders to like for like each another like so like roughly according to that plan like and like I'm sure with like at person moving only after like witnessing like definitely that would have certainly and precisely might have been like in that time might have been observing like the carefully observing into what comments of each of like the things in like the online different tournaments. So like definitely like as the scene like I'm definitely the fake cups would be like the member in like as the scene that like the could be seen as like that absolute threat and like as like that absolute uh like more than a threat that has like that absolute member to like okay watch out for and basically to target could be around case and definitely member preps to like would be totally feeling that basically magma would be more than enough to like to take on Aztec and that like Thor will be more than enough to like take on like Mimosa to be along the line really straight away or something and like for like that total focus would be on like face justice that may not be direction like just like a plan that I'm with the for like but right now simply on like that relates to like magma as well as like source like the scenarios that I'm that way like I'm different like the scenario to be like on like the battle begins like I'm different like uh because like totally contrary to like the situation and looking like such a scenario like, like once that the battle begins it's just like straight away would be focusing on like the face so like the PM and like while like the face of something but like come straight away maybe like travel towards like the face of this like the scenario parameters that way like tended battle between like the face of and like straight away it's beginning at that point itself is like the scenario parameter right so while this will be happening like I'm going to plan like I'm like and the plate as well as being of the would be actually as they have already they would be definitely determined to like actually have this time have like definitely have Asta himself, either Asta or like Mimosa luckily. And like luckily after Mimosa might have definitely plan and basically after the plan like the plan like in they might have Asta and Mimosa might have agreed to have like definitely Asta to be like the one in like the second stage to definitely uh make it to like the still of like the opposite team and the feeling like from still of like the opposite team while Mimosa would be totally focusing on guarding that system. So there along the line, they might have planned respectively monitoring. So definitely to ensure that like the picture doesn't succeed in like the strong like of the team and instead of like the picture ends up becoming Asta himself that is called using that is strong like like opponent team would be definitely that much of like an extreme high priority at present for like Mimosa and Asta might be like the active situation definitely monitoring. So that way, quite after would be once like the stage two bat would be doing him so and like after straight away charging him towards like the surface of like the team while Magma's will be straight away charging towards like Haskas like looking out of that way like an intense fight between like once like the bat begins like an intense fight between like Asta and Magma and an intense fight between simultaneously intense fight between like Asta and Magma and like um fakes up and like and like Mimosa and so is what I'm looking for. And play ultimate brings them to different like as per like the secret plan between like Mimosa and Asta, like they might not only decide that like unlike in like I think like in like the first battle like basically Asta and Mimosa to different this time to take a totally different strategy where like Mimosa won't be going along with like Asta with like the distance to like the fate of like the opposite team, but like instead having like Mimosa these stages with like the on the fate of Asta's team itself while focusing on protecting still while Asda single-handedly attending to that sorry like still of the one thing. Okay, along the lines like Asda and Mimosa would have planned a similar direction because like Asda I'm totally putting like due to like Asda would be totally feeling that basically confident enough to be able to like throw that against like Magma and Soul against like the likes of like Magma, Soul and Chris would be along the lines of like that or confidence or like feeling of confidence that Asda would be feeling is definitely not for me. So like that is like the plan that I'm looking and so definitely that way like I'm suffering like while Asuka eventually was like the battle against like while Asuka would be fighting off against like Magma and like Chris would be fighting off against like the fake of like I'm suffering that sword like I'm suffering like remotely like attacking from that kind of discriminating source case as well like sword would be according to like specific like order like sword would be most likely like not charged towards like the sugar free that still is the language another that I'm going so like sword from the way like but still like still would be remotely sending out like magical attacks towards like Mimosa's hands up into like this not that everyone. So like the battle between Sword and Mimosa and Sentence also taking place. But like so like such remote sending of like attack long range attacks between like Mimosa and so such like personality balance. This also I think most likely Mimosa as well as like Sword might be able to like shoot out such like absolute extreme long range attacks as well. Might be the case that so like this fight totally happening and I'm looking like eventually the scenario should be the scenario could be like Astra simply succeeding in lack of lead, bypassing, taking out lack of foreign magma and like bypassing magma and like eventually I'm totally Astra would be like would be feeling absolutely hopeful. Astra was feeling absolutely hopeful as like so literally seeing like Astra charging towards like the free of like the opposite team. And basically Mimosa would be putting like sword under pressure like while repeatedly launching like long range attack at like sword while Astra as well would be charging towards like sword just like the scenario that I'm looking at. So definitely white Asta would be that way, getting so close to like Sword and like still like at that point I'm looking like Sword only struggling to like stop Asta and like Asta would be that would be about to like the Sword would be about to like for the kill of like the opposite team like at that point I'm looking like at that point like most likely only at that point, like I'm whispering that the page of like bring out with like so power and strength and basically at that very last second I was whispering like the page of like easily like four power first with like a single attack and like in an instant itself like the page of like that making right in front of like the crystal of like source team and basically right before as that would like land was like those fight and so like of like the opposite team like I'm thinking like the page of like leads this one like it's like full speed and that way like I'm different that as well I'm different most like big team like the calculative villain realistic strategy by like the players this time in like stage two battle to like Charlie more as well as like Mimosa and especially as that to Charlie in that as in front of like Sender if it is now like understand such a realistic strategy is what I'm different like the players most likely using in like the stage two battle like the scenario that I'm looking for like I'm so different like that I would take I think from like the players as if like is like in this struggling against like in like the battle in like the stage two battle just so that just to that way to that spread as the into like having as the so we make it eventually make it to that the still of like the opposite team and like feeling hopeful as the like as can be a bit point that still of like the of the team and will be able to like stay in that spot like only to like rush all that hope of like as can remove that. And that way like I'm just like in a scenario where like even after that stage to battle like I'm just like once again like the big like succeeding in like making like as well as like most of like the great effort and hard work like the point that's in front of that entire like the crowd. And basically at that point like even though I'm totally bring like scenario to be like as be even more extremely frustrated and embrace towards like the take of still as that not being able to like, anything about it. It's like enough that I'm talking about it. So yeah, I'm talking about maybe like as the not being able to like, control himself and about to like at that point like launching a powerful attack against after like the fake at that point. So that absolutely but like the fake usually like repelling back, countering that attack, and basically setting that attack back straight at like after. Because like even that such a scenario like I'm just going like the waves would have only foreseen and might have already set up this like counter spell exactly for such an occasion. Where like as that would be going out of control as well. It's also like an area of the scenario that I'm in that way like as that getting hit by its own attack. It's like also like an of the scenario. And once again that way like as that and that's getting and that's in front of like and that picture out is also like an agent possible scenario that definitely still has to definitely refuses to like give up and definitely would be would be ensuring to like destroy like the plans of like the fake ones to like and that like as time members in that semifinals will be along the lines of like with that with the combination as they will be refusing to like give up. But like I'm preferring like in like the semifinals like I'm so need to get my impression that like most likely scenario being through like in Augustus like realistic and stealthy intervention resulting in like both Asta not only Asta as well as like but also Jonas and most likely like the semi-final battle like not being able to like perform at all and most likely ending up being getting into like a trouncing like state in the middle of the battlefield. And basically that way it's like along with like Asta even Jonas will get embarrassed in like during like the semi-final battle like in the scenario that's normal. Okay, so like you have to mention right now, Stephanie for like for it to be most likely the that special like stealthy strategy to like launch this like after unexpected and ambush attack targeting specifically the face stuff might be like the reason for like risk right now before like their battle against like ancestry even begins like really pointing at like hashtag while even saying dialogues to make you that leading to like after three matches like it's like hashtag that basically it's like targeting uh, might be roughly a calculated like practical plan of like to like okay that way in hopes of that through such dialogue being able to like trick like the face of so that like once like the batch begins like the faces will be having to like guard down and won't be expecting a straight away attack uh, by Chris at like the face of so that like straight away once like the battle begins like so like only gets the upper hand into like battle against like the face of whom might be like the only person that would be even concerned about and would be only even seeing as like a target as for like the safety that might be like the actual job situation with even preemption. But like I'm saying that even while at present like Mimosa as well as like has captain they totally falling for this like strategy of like of Zacharias and that way while once like the battle begins while as well as like Mimosa they don't be expecting like to like straight away sharp into towards like has that like and like but like I'm so different like in the case of like the fake of like skins would have only been if they have succeed through that the stealthy strategy of that question that way like I'm and like the moment that Krish would have pointed at like have the challenging have that before like the battle and like everything like the fakers might have easily seen that strategies of like stealthy strategy of like uh Krish might have felt totally obvious to like the faces, and that way like once like the battle begins itself like the faces. I'm totally putting the scenario to be like once like the battle begins itself like the faces totally expecting like an incoming charge attack by Krish at him, and hence like easily be able to like counter against like a charge attack as well. Like an individual person that I'm about like and my prescription. At that point, I was like at that point I was like shockingly realizing that basically that she had like underestimated like the papers. So it's like a pretty kind of play I'm considering right now. So like while I'm probably putting like the papers to definitely like stage two battle to definitely eventually end up ensuring to like senders and more stuff in like stage two battle and like what I'm still in the mother mission for eventually being like the big of himself like that will be eventually ending up with drawing like that of like of the team like even so like I'm just right now for like most likely the face of like basically ensuring that making it like a priority when it's big priorities to like definitely solely due to the factor of like being a royalty like like a big plus like also maybe ensuring to like like embarrass like even maybe a bit more than even more than Asta as well. In like the battle is also like an the scenario that I'm explaining because like definitely yeah because like I'm looking like even though Mimosa as well is like a royalty like definitely since like the manners of like it's like different from that of like Mimosa whose man from more way more down to like I'm not like this might be the reason for like the fakes of not targeting Mimosa to the exact equivalent levels of that of like as that when it comes to like uh, when it comes to his like marketing and everything might be like a case definitely remembering. But in the case of Lakers for Lakers being royalty as well as Lakers like even displaying that like whole man's of like being like being so full of himself and everything like that might not definitely like trigger like that might not be triggered like the fake specifically with represent that I'm talking most likely be connected to lack of memory of like disturbing memory within like the face of where like according to my definition totally bring like the face might be actually that inactivity might be like the end product of next student that mean of frame so like the face of as well as students might have injured like the magic might end up in like the stem parts together and in which like I'm doing acting Julius case like after like the magic night after Julius and the faces might have performed like I'm like scenario might have been in Julius case like all the each and every single one of like the magic nights squad captains might have like bond Julius in like their squad might have been the case and like which might have been the league one like the faces as well might have been totally expecting after his like performance in like the magic nights and things like that to happen. But like in the case of like the faces like I'm like none of like the management squad captains might have formed of like the pace of solely due to like this like extreme or confident nature of like the pace of which like each and every single one of like the squad captains back then might have posed like the pace of that like just totally unfitting of like the position of like management might have been along the lines of different like that way like pixels might have got projected and like at that point I'm different like the other competitors in that match like 10% and like a great number of them might have been that years like 10% might have been royalty might have been the case also the clean experiment both like a great number of like those competitors who might have been royalty who might have performed that might interest them way worse than like the basis might have still gotten selected while like the basis might have got rejected simply by the selection. And that way like at that point like all this great number of like among those great number of like competitors who might have been royalty who might have gotten selected as well like on the like all of them might have totally made fun of like the basis and might have mocked him for like basically because like I'm like the pictures white performance and then all of them which might have happened in like the night in the end of the time back then like the pictures might have maybe white performing better than them like might have only mocked them still at that point might have been the case so like they might have all mocked like the picture back when he might have got predicted by all the squad captains and like those other competitors who might have been like a great number of them who might have been like royalty might have got selected like at that point they might have mocked back against like space that might have been like against the like string. So like since like way back then, like like due to that influence, so different like the bakers might have had this like title of like royalty as like seen as like a target for like bakers. Definitely remembering. So like if they are present have different like the bakers most likely due to that enjoy like taking out all that absolute frustration uh against like for like the scenarios that I'm referring in like the upcoming stage to battle against like the teams like the scenario that I'm doing. That way I'm looking like for like even though totally like behaves in like high and mighty way, like and deep down like might be definitely someone who genuinely care and genuinely to be have like would be genuinely a lot selfish and they can do having like that genuine like bond towards like his like and concern and everything towards like respect moments and everything. And generally might be down even proud of like when he like the kind of care that naturally like might be get like I'm like Chris totally getting like Baker's probably extremely embarrassing for Chris in like the stage two battle. Maybe even most likely even more a bit more than like how much like the Baker could be embarrassing and mocking as that in like the stage two battle, reflecting the scenario that I'm looking at and my very lyrics convention right now. And that topic topic will be only regarding Mimosa as well. To that explain like Mimosa until that point, like even though she might have had like this uh, it's like towards like the fake concerning like the fake like confidence and the way like the fake didn't cooperate, it doesn't cooperate like after and Mimosa like still like it might have that was like that Mimosa might have had towards like the fake or like the government said maybe some might have had towards like the fixer might have been very fragile, might have been like reduced. But like I'm going to find like after like stage to battle like once like a things and like the fixer would be extremely like embarrassing like the like also for the crush like from that point on like once the battle would be over like like Mimosa as well like exactly like as that would be extremely determined to like happily to not let like the bakers like basically get away with like all of it like waste and everything and to like not let like the bakers totally battle like the way he does by mocking others like anymore would be along the lines that exactly 12 contextual and levels of like Asta like or even a bit more than Asta like Mimosa would be for my half like the stage to battle it's like showing the scenario that I'm looking for like problem right? So definitely I'm looking like at that point like after like stage to battle like I'm like most likely like only getting him back but like I'm looking like by the time the stage to battle will go like I'm looking like the face of like not getting badly even injuring like as well it's like the scenario that I'm and at that point I'm looking like the sister and brother bond of like Mimosa and which like slowly seeing absolutely visible kind of like state once like the battle will be over because like there will be that genuine deep concern within like Mimosa towards like Random remembering like once like the battle will be over like I'm like Mimosa totally running straight towards like Rush and basically straight away using and I'm thinking that it will be most likely that while like the battle will be over that I'm looking like that ultimate attack like I'm looking like the paper will be like one of those like powerful attacks the papers will be landing on like Krish and like deeply injuring Krish. It's like the scenario that I'm going. So like that way once like the battle will be over at that point I'm looking like we go straight away running towards like the badly injured and sideline Krish and like will be straight away that would be genuinely concerned for like such strength and would be straight away using all of like maxing out stuff stealing magic to like probably to like extend that like recovery to have like have got a first like but even with like using up all of her like healing magic like everything still even though Kush will be recovering to a certain extent still that injury will be that much worse that like I'm thinking like this would be probably straight away taken out of like the Royal Knights exam like location for treatment. Uh maybe by own himself or by like the doctor owns like help us like the scenario that I'm going and my version that or like in the scenario that I'm so like but you know mention right now is that like the stealthy trap that like takes up set up in like the battlefield events because like the battle might be so far might have been only super to maybe only just like among like the people present in like the overnight exam location like I'm think might have been only visible to maybe Julius as well as like Rafael as well as maybe even Zoom might have been like the only few individuals alone to whom like the trust stealthy traps already set up by like the fakers might have been even visible. Uh, might be like that to distribution that remember to like definitely to totally counter that like I'm like that very same strategy of which like the fakers is using like proliferating to give that absolute challenge to like the fakers like the spring like it might have been definitely once like the fakers like after like the fakers like first battle in like the Royal Knights and like it might have been to just it might be only at that point that like to just who might have only performed like the counter spell and everything once like the fakers even set it up itself like this might have witnessed all of that definitely clearly definitely not to like on witnessing that it might be only at that point that like students might have even decided to might have even decided to like take the decision to like totally change like the stage after like each stage of like the online defense tournament. So that like basically so that like so that like the takers can like take advantage and like in an over repetition manner to like use the same strategy of like setting traps beforehand like again and again so that like the takers will be having a challenge like and will be having to be able to like come up with like so creative new and different ways to like totally put it so that like you will have to like put in that effort and find new and creative ways himself to be able to like succeed and progress in like the Royal Line success. To put that challenge on like okay, that's like it might have been like sponges like Julius might have taken only at that point after like first witnessing like the after first witnessing like things of like setting up like the common squares and might have been like that to definitely my preemption. Okay, so like the minimum prevention right now is definitely then like the basis might be totally definitely lying about like you can having like setup tracks on like the battlefield on like the previous state for like the online system would be such an absolute light to that which like the execute might be only right now consciously saying to like hide this lack of strategy and unique ability and skills which allows like the baker to like totally to set up track without anyone who's not like the exceptional levels at like such exceptional levels of like magical power level like to be able to like with the like there will be like unique strategy of like the vehicles which might be definitely a similar by the emissions through which like he would be setting up all these traps before like each of the like that right before like each of like the bats of like the vehicles would be only when like the vehicles would be naturally would be setting up like simply setting up the traps might be like that to the lemon preemption because like it's like all the traps like the paper has like set up like the previous day would be like getting like would be having like all the like competitors who faced off in like the stage one of like the Royal Knight system after like such team or ending up falling in all those great number of paths. So like definitely since that didn't happen, like I'm so different definitely the baser might not actually might also emphasis that the baser might not actually only might be having the flex strategy where like we might have the baser might be only having the like unique power which like we might be only able to like simultaneously create like a clone of like himself which he might be also simultaneously at the same time would he also be able to like turn invisible as well. And invisible clone of like the baser like would be something that the baser might be able to like create for like a certain extent of like a time limit might be that the unique power, like magical power that the Pixels might be possessing. Using which like how like the Pixels is formed that each of the like battle would be having like the power to like steadily set up trap to go up to like the battlefield and set up trap in multiple parts in like the battlefield. Might be like the activity of like the unique power of like the Pixels, which like through the present like the Pixels like through it like light might be trying to like hide from like as well as like Mimosa, so that like the Pixels would be once again able to like uh uh mock and like eventually put as the Mimosa into such embarrassing situation while like the Bakers will be once again able to like steal all the glory and spotlight of like strong like still up like the opposite team from that gender single type. Might be like the actuality of like the situation and actuality of that what like the Bakers might be attempting right now. That would be my question theory and not sure right now. So like the question of operation about different like the Bakers that way like might have only set up with like stealthy traps using it like very different unique and stealthy strategy mostly before like the stage only one like the stage one of like the online exam tournament was over, might be that that would have minimum frames. So luckily, the Pacers might have been absolutely confident that it even in like stage two, like the first battle would be like their team. So like the Pacers might have exactly set up all the traps using the medicine that we have to like the stage one of like the tournament might have been over, might have been like actually what might have happened simply when celebration. So once like Julius like probably like gave the orders and like once like the stage was like the stage of like stage the battlefield of like stage one was like changing after like the stage one round was over. Like at that point, considering like what next stage might have been, he might have straight away either remotely might have undone all next the trap that he might have already set up in like the battlefield uh, for like his like stage two battle, or like he might have quickly like instantly he might have totally like use that very same power and might have like suddenly might have quickly gone up to like the battlefield as like the battlefield was like changing, like he might have quickly gone up there and to that have just in an invisible and like a phone like state he might have quickly gone up there and might have actually under like the trust himself might have been like the other scenario what might happen definitely the protection. Like we have that as like right as like the battlefield was like starting to like change for like the stage at that point. So certainly absolutely remember mention that like definitely the Patriots might have definitely undone all the crap he might have said. Definitely due to that him totally fearing that maybe he doesn't because like he most likely feeling at that point that he has absolutely no other choice other than to like undo all the crap else like once like the battlefield would be like the process of like shifting and suddenly changing that at that point like all of this like traps would be going off and that way like then the different crowds would be witnessing that process of all that like stealthy traps or the person in that battlefield for like the battle of like the pickup and that way like them or like then the different crowd being able to like, figure out that basically like the pickups like setting up like stealthy traps before just like battle in each round and that way so that like to prevent like customer visiting from like only expecting such traps before each round in which like the big uh, if each battle in like the tournament against like the team of the big club like that will be like the last thing like the big club will be wanting so giving them the so like definitely right now by the big club saying this live ends with like Asta as well as like Mimosa you're thinking to the point of like basically of like basically like the papers have set up all this like trap on like previous day like as to like why like the remaining teams like haven't even after all these like battles after their battle like and like the Ronin system have no for the trap like offset by like multiple traps that by like the papers like people to crack like and whispering like due to like Asta and Mimosa totally right now leading to like the stage to battle like definitely after either after nor Mimosa not being able to like think to that extent and basically that way like hope Mimosa as well as like have staff will be only expecting like the expecting like a bunch of like stealthy traps often like the battlefield and with like the base of like not revealing to like after or like Mimosa about like where Serenity has like set up like the traps which might be totally alike that the base would be totally telling to like Asta and like Mimosa so that like basically to have like a forecast as well as something like the battlefield so he be focused on like not getting caught in like the any of like the steady traps set by like the fake so that like the fake could like straight away charge in like and basically still on spotlight might be like the plan of the fake definitely not the impression. So that's like the scenario that I'm trying to show. Like once like face to battle even begins to sell back and like due to this like whole situation with like the tracks which like has done of it's like only maybe like I'm looking like has come out likely straight away telling me about that like no unlike in like the round one like for like Mimosa in like stage two battle to like not or leave more but like the time to stay exactly where like you got the and like to thoroughly guard like the stuff the house but Asta would be carefully attempting to like avoid like the stealthy traps set by the face of by following like the exact path like exact movements of like the face and that way like and that way like totally eventually like would be attempting to like surpass like bypass like the face and make it through like the result of like the opponent team by going through that exact direction that the face would be known in like the battlefield and that way like after attempting to like probably would be managing to like destroy the crystal of like the opposite team before like the Lakers would be along the lines of this like as I would discuss the planning with like Mimosa and telling Mimosa like scenario that and this will be might be definitely exactly what like the Lakers will also want definitely meant to be able to. So like that way like I'm slowly bringing like in the stage two battle like I'm bringing like in the situation being like I'm totally bringing would be that in the battlefield stage two battlefield there most likely being absolutely no traps at all. Yeah, like after would be totally cluelessly worried about like stepping on any of like the traps sent by like the fake stuff while they are in actually their own any traps at all. And that way like a lot of hackers like focus in like the phase two battle like only going in like the direction of like basically in like worry of like not falling into like any trap and that even affecting hackers like performance literally in like as the battle which I'm probably putting into happening against like Magna in like the phase two battle as well. It's like the scenario that all of this latitude subjects I'm totally putting will be taken advantage of by the fakes of thinking that eventually the fakes of ending up like totally destroying like the result of like the team of like push even in like the stage two as well. It's like the scenario that's being on an also the feeling of preemption right now is definitely for like by the time that the Royal Knight system tournament would be entire tournament would be finally over like once like the finals of like the Royal Knight system would be over tournament will be over like at that point I'm definitely prepping exactly at that point I'm definitely prepping that King Augustus to like probably fall ill or like sick. It's like the scenarios that I'm talking about and that would be definitely connected to like the consistent presence of like the mage of Owens also throughout like the Royal Knight section so far. Close to like the King Julius. The village is like Augustus as well. I think it's like sitting close to like but Julius is like definitely like the consistent presence of like Lord Owens. Like definitely would be eventually playing a role, would be eventually having like an importance since like I'm totally playing like of Owens that the league might be like the mage of Owens might be distantly allied to like the AS Midnight Sun and would be having some sort of like a connection as well, most likely to like the AS Midnight Sun and hence might also be integrate to like the Clover and making it to like the position of like this main of I think like of like I think like so definitely I would probably like him totally like definitely is going to most likely the front will be still be allied to like Eye Domination and that will like him as part of like some sort of his plan connected to like Eye Domination that him probably steadily adding additives to that the food that like King Augustus would be consuming which I'm probably bringing into the resulting in like King Augustus like totally falling sick by the time like the Royal Knight system will be over. It's like that in the scenario that I'm again like totally like like most likely wanting that exactly happen to happen most likely due to like some sort of like a secret plan connected to like by termination. This is also like getting into scenario that I'm into the right and I'm very sure. Also the plane of the programmers that I'm speaking on to put me that like since like it's like just very same like Dr. Owen that like looking after like taking care of like the treatment of like Fugadion as well. So this is the mandatory emission as for like Fugadion definitely which will not making a return or like a full recovery. And basically Fugadion on the like eventually in like the future like would be remaining in like different kind of like status like in the scenario that I'm looking and like eventually until like in the future like Fugadion would be eventually getting taken off like during the scenario that way like due to like instability I just like in the name of like uh, treatment like most likely like like the villains pick like not Owens like different that would be most likely simply giving to like puberty about which like I already know we are aware that way would be definitely according to like the secret plan uh, of like the Eye of the Renaissance because like during that while list I think had like basically showed up in front of like this like puberty on before like puberty on like like basically once like Lich has taken that like jewel or like that magic stone from like Fusion, like at that point like I'm just doing that whole interacting like I'm different like that might have been like some sort of like a social uh thing connected to like the eye of the midnight which might have which might have been accidentally created by Lich himself or like which like or at that point like Lich might have actually found out that like Fusion knew about this like about this like Fusion might have been only about like a related to like the assessment. Might have been also the case or like just like about this like Wilbraham might have even found out once he like glitched while this had like showed up to like create that ice storm for us, fuel might have been what might have happened is certainly one of the bottom is very little brain. Definitely so definitely if you believe on not making our chloric and not making our turns might be of like that much of like high spinatic priority for like high termination. And since the upon termination like ons might be secretly allied to like high termination like the name in that way, you believe on not due to like solely due to like the winner that winners take like lockdowns like and that people are not making a return and I'm also like people are eventually like the people are like probably get taken off that way and that way like even at that point I'm just like a journey like the thing up straight away thinking that basically it's all being due to like the aftermath or like after effects of like that fight that in like the past like literally that people don't have just like the feminism that they had lost like people and like them only like most likely maybe ask that most likely eventually like the future being like first person to like find out about like the to be able to like connect the dots, especially with like phones like having like while as just like was like in like that future kind of like a situation that from which like as the one of like absolute Victoria and like as for like phones like not knowing about like the which is like being able to like your as the like that definitely might have been an open like but naturally, like compounds might have been when I'm fully aware of like the twin of witches and have like unique powers and maybe like compounds themselves might have also had like unique secret spells using which is like compounds as well might have been able to like cure cancer but like that sort of situation might have been solely due to like this like compounds like stealthy allegiance to like diatomination possibly being the reason that way that him probably being up to date and being well only aware like basically as causing like the scope which like missed want so badly and everything. So I believe that being like back then like possibly being like a conscious in life that like uh not points might also be like step back and that like as a in the will be kind of like have to be controlling. Along such lines like I'm just like as the believe in the institute of being like the ultimate person to like connect the dots and like suddenly find out they realize that like not points is like actually with that's like simply allied to like the minute and everything. Is like within the institute of scenario that I'm still looking at I'm sorry. And like not possibly when I'm different for like fundamental information like to consistently length of like of owns like by the time like the Royal system would be over like King Augustus falling like seriously like ill and I'm different like at that point like basically like how Rowan like harassing and taking away like King Augustus like the name of treatment but like that eventually ending up with like Rowan's like ending up abducting like King Augustus and I'm different like definitely like since I got to my preparation like Dr. Owens might be currently arrived like the experiment and so definitely about like a Royal Knights exam as well as like preparing like Royal Knights army to like attack with like secret base of like the like the midnight and all the like points might have by now might have somebody get them. And the police of like advance the humans as well might be definitely still be allied to like the Nights and like this might be like this will have Royal Knights exam and Royal Knights army attack incoming like stack and everything might be what all this like the minutes and person might be up to date. So like as part of like their strategy like I'm just doing that as well. Maybe usually possibly being the case like there's also like a possibility that I'm just running. So like that's just scenarios where like by the time the overnight system would be over like Augustus Pond badly fit and basically like also like the name of that treatment like for which the updating like things Augustus and like take him to this like exact location where like the eye of the midnight sun might go totally create them with like absolute ultimate trap of like the location and exactly to that location like owns like taking like King Augustus and basically that way to like have to give up like the Royal Knights army to that exact location. That way to like take out like the formidable Royal Knights army forces like straight away through like that trap location where like high level traps along with like a bunch of like great number of like subordinates of like the minutes and as well might be still be hiding in that trap like kind of like dungeon or like a cave like locations that can use the that are moving over the while like the I-Terminate like the top members of like I-Terminate and like the top subordinate like as well as like the third as well as like list as well as like full member like the original list from like the fast as well as like the percentage which might also exist like all of them like of that base having shifted to their new base at like a new percentage. Like about all of that like I'm like only eventually after like saving information from that kind of like a like location like maybe like the only at that point like is the everyone in that lost in the eventually only when we finding out about the source. Also, it's like an eventual people of the scenario that I'm looking over morning and not today right now. So about that it's looking for like maybe like the case of having set up all of it like exactly after like the stage one amount of like the run and defense of might have been over and like once like the researching like studios like will suddenly started to like change up like the stage one like at that point of maybe like and changing up like the battlefield like at that point I'm going for like stage two like at that point I'm going maybe like the face of like not be having been able to like undo like the traps yet like I'm putting like the, all of the traps even with like the battlefield stage change like might have not gone off to like at least still the traps might be present at like even like the new battlefield as well but like as well like the location of like the traps like I'm maybe uh, maybe that not even like the takes of really having like absolutely no idea of at all. I see like that different situations like also like about the current. So like at present with like Hasta transforming into his like black Hasta form like I'm still like I'm whispering right now as like Hasta will be traveling towards like the like such a important like I'm definitely uh like I'm looking like first like only seeing like as I was like was like for like charging towards like them so like at that point I was like push as well really charging towards like has to count has just like as the incoming charge. So like I'm moving that right before like we should be about to land send off with like magic attack and like as that right before that itself I'm most likely as that only even with like argument power like probably running into one of like the traps of like the face of this like the scenario that I'm expecting. Which about which like the muscle location of that part like something like the big would be having an idea about after like the stage was like changed backfield was changed might be like the next supplement so like that way like Asuka okay falling on to that because like Asuka form like maybe falling on to like one of like the trap and that setting off like a bunch of like traps like in the simultaneous manner to which or like I'm like after like falling into like one of like the traps like I'm has that only get like totally falling into another trap like that intensity of like that trap like doing a lot of damage to like Asuka and like Asuka from there like totally the intensity of like that trap like has totally falling off from there to like another trap and like the next trap and like simultaneously a whole lot of like send after the traps like that like the might have set onto like the battlefield like has that only falling into like each and every single one of them and like that way through has the like has the alone like taking like all that injury from like and damage of all that trust like the scenario that I'm totally following. And that I'm totally following like only have being such an unexpected scenario for like forecaster who would have only or conflict of like with like just like a star form like to be to be able to like bypass all the traps and clearly even like be able to have that absolute defense against like the trap would be along the lines of like in our confidence manner like as I might have charged before like pointing out to like the within one of like the traps like the in the scenario that I was only putting and my different version and that point I was for like as well as like so as well as like magma in a confused manner like anything as like as that would be like falling into and taking damage on like one part after another. So, like also like an individual scenario that I'm looking at right now. Okay, so like I'm still remember mention that like takes Zora that elder of might definitely be Julius, especially in the mention. So definitely like this like has this dialogues that that remind Zora of it like childhood like and bring that the person telling Zora about like magic knights like working as that absolute thing. Like that person might definitely be Zora's like father, like not only just like Zora's father, but Zora as well as like Julius' like father in actuality might be the case in the Klingon script. So like back then when it's back then in like the past once like their father might have been telling us about this like different like Judas might have like all those like teachings of like their parents like Judas might have seen that about like the magic like Judas might have accepted that absolute uh and it might have been extremely inspiring for like Julius. Uh, while Zora, on the other hand, like might have been totally against that. Like Zora's mindset might have been totally against that, and like Zora might have wanted like to take all the glory and spotlight for himself. That basically Zora might have totally believed that like it's all about like himself getting as strong as possible and basically even surpassing everybody else, and with which and he will have like rely on everybody else that he will be able to like achieve all of both himself and defeat all the villains himself single-handedly would be along the lines like Sora might have absolutely strongly believed, and like that way like his advice and teachings of like Sora's like father, which might have been which like that way being against everything that Zora might have believed, like Zora might have not taken his like father seriously, might have and just like taken seriously and might have thoroughly rebelled against it, all the way to his like and all the way to like the point where like he might have entered into like the Mason desiring to be a mastermind, and with that as good intent to like only change everything, the ideologies and everything that the magic might believe and the magic squad captains believe about like unity to like change all that, and that these auras that all might have been to like become like circling and basically that way to change up all the ideologies of like the magic and to tell them that it's all about like basically being like the strongest and rather than teamwork. Zora might have according to like Zora's point of view, Zora might have seen that he developing has a team as like an excuse for like staying with his needs, and each and every single one of them should be like focusing on like we can get the as strong as like possible for that, so that individually each of them won't be like needing any teamwork, and individually each of them that will be exceptionally strong, and basically that will be like how that the strength of like the clothing that can be like maximized, the army of the natures of like the cloth that can be maximized might be around the line numbers and like maybe Zora might have been so like to prove out this like Zora might have entered into like the match night and system along with like Julius and like I'm saying like that way like according to my mention like while Julius might have been selected by each and every single one of like the match night squad captains like Zora might have been selected by each and every single one of like the match night squad captains, and even at that point I'm very same teaching and advice of like Zora's father like Zora might have once again like the next time he might have heard that might have been from like the match night squad captains during like the match night introduction once like uh Zora might have been rejected by each and every single one of them, which even back then might have triggered like and I would like Zora back then might have been a middle element. So like since then it might be like person through Asgard that like Zora might be hearing that very same title of like the match like team there at looks right right now through Asgard. Uh might be like the actuality of like how Asgard's dialogue might be connected so much to like Zora's like past. Definitely might be the case, definitely with the so like even right now in like the person like I'm like even with like Hashtag saying that they didn't say dialogue might be the case. So definitely that totally instead of like accepting like I'm like once again like triggering that rebellious nature within like Zora once again is like the scenario that happening, and that way like Zora from this point on other styles of as time like only ending up triggering Zora even more, and like Zora being absolutely determined to like throw Asta and her stuff like ideology strong, and definitely I'm looking like from this point I'm looking like Zora solely solely due to this dialogue of like Asta from the point like that triggering Zora to the point of like Zora at from this point on like at least seriously competing with like hashtag to prove hashtag ideology or and like the ideologies of like the management of like teamwork around by totally like taking it to like absolute priority to definitely ensure to like win the like current battle against like resisting single-handedly by his own by surpassing hashtag and by himself. It's like a scenario that I'm thinking, and especially with like hashtag not having access to his like black hashtag superpower like I'm just bringing up league due to that, like I'm running like in this current battle against like a team, like I'm using like Asta totally starting to like struggle, and I'm using right now for to be totally an unmatched scenario for like Asta, while Asta would be definitely a confident thing that basically by displaying this like black Asta powers and with which like Asta even like erasing away like the cherry blossom magic of like Crush as well as like the trap magic spells of like Zora like after been only consolidating that basically Asta has proved to be like having like more strength than them, that basically that like the basis right now might have had got might have humbled down to the point of like basically relying on like basically teaming up with like Asta. Might be along the lines like that was your mostly thing right now, but like certainly like that definitely not happening, and the flipping with like Asta not being able like access like Asta power like continuously like definitely due to that factor. I'm just preparing right now like the fake Zora like basically right now by using like this one power like like things straight away charging towards like items charging towards like Krish and like basically totally have them both having that in this battle in which like definitely while they will be fighting that in this battle like I'm saying like Asta will be totally disappointed and so they only once again disappointed in like Zora and like Asta will be once again along with like Mimosa, with like Asta canceling out all the traps, like Asta along with like Mimosa and bring at that point once again deciding to use the very same strategy of like basically having like the two of them like charge towards like the three of like the team with like the crystal with like Mimosa's clan powers like holding on to like the crystal and that way like I'm trying like eventually after making it towards like crystal of like the team and like, get like I'm like while like Zora will be having that in a battle against Krish, but like I'm doing it as like and I was doing like as I will be getting so close to like like I'm doing it even while having that in the battle against like Krish, like I'm like seeing Asta about to take the spotlight by destroying like Krish, like basically that would be triggering like Zora even more, and I'm like so that would be bring out like even more powers out of like hidden powers out of like Zora, which like Zora would be probably like similar like that will be probably repeating like at that point and the deals were totally charging but that after feel like charging straight towards like the pistol and right as I would be thinking that like he would definitely be able to like destroy like the pistol and by then like I'm like the most of like Asta totally and with like Asta power like I'm putting them both like managing to like bypass both sword as well as magma like scenario that I'm so like as then so different thing that basically has done definitely this time going to succeed in like from like still up with opposite team like and that way last second have like an extremely enraged and triggered like Zora like totally charging towards like the crystal and like finally making it and like fight with War Asta would be able to like destroy like the doctor things like Zora destroying like being like the one once again to like destroy the crystal of the doctor thing and taking that spot like in a sword and like single handles man one game is like in the scenario that I'm also going to and my personal and that way, at that point, like Dora feeling absolutely satisfied, and at that point, that Dora actually fixing in his mind with that absolute determination to like ensure to like keep that up until all the way reaching like the finals and he's even ending up winning like the finals like single-handedly, and then to like for Dora to definitely make his like speech totally by looking down on like the match nights and like the match night ideology of like teamwork and basically for him to like totally at that point make that speech in front of like everyone including Julius and for him to like talk back against like all those like advices by all of them, all of those people in like the past who had told him about like teamwork and teamwork and everything. For him to like throw his like ideology in front of like everyone by single-handedly like through actions like by single-handedly winning like the entirety of like the through his own powers alone like winning like the entirety of like Savannah etc and that way for him to like make that bold statement of his own ideology would be definitely what like the next once again like uh, at that point like Zora would be probably fixing in his mind that that's in Germany. It's like in the scenario that I'm also going to like I'm yes sir I'm definitely like pretty much right now definitely for like Zora to like it is still just like really holding on to his like ideology of like wanting to like to handle those team or the glory and like for my talking might be like actually just the relationship level so like the game is right now for like Asta and Mimosa most likely maybe Mimosa coming up with like the idea to like basically what Asta and Mimosa to be like the people kind of like that will be creating all the distractions for like the opposite team so that like just so that like Zora could like totally steadily set up this like basic track with like maximum power with like the current limited mana and time that he could have would be along the lines of like the plan that I'm doing that most likely Mimosa would be coming up with and telling Zora like the scenario that I'm doing. So that way like I'm just bring that and the like and at that point I'm just bring definitely that way like Mimosa as well as that would be like attracting like the attention of like of like Magma as well as Soul, but like and Krish for like certain while, but like Lucidia is like totally knows like the absence of like basically of like Zora might be a plan of like might be connected to like Asta as well as like Mimosa's like distraction and like everything might be along the lines and different like everything as can Mimosa might be doing would be a distraction and will be connected to like the missing of like the sudden missing of like Zora would be along the lines and those can usually push along like the usually will be figuring out there's like the scenario set up. So like by that like I'm still by the time it should be figuring out like I'm just something like Zora might specifically like putting on the track with like the scenario that I'm on the track. Definitely. And by the time should be realizing when we feel that suspicion like and when we feeling that like this might be the case like at that point symptoms when Zora after like completing setting up all the track will be showing up just like the scenario that I will be showing up out of that conflict about of like the scenario that I'm looking. So definitely that way like I'm referring like according to like Zora as well as like after the like name of a plan and like at that point. And then that's when I'm referring solely due to the scraps of like Zora like I'm referring might be like Zora might have told like Mimosa that like basically she can also leave behind like their footsteps and they will charge ahead because like the path will be set and basically so that like enemy won't be able to like get close to the distance and they will be like and for the three of them to like hopefully make that trio ultimate charge attack and to like final attack to like straight away make it to like the pistol of like the and straight away like with that full on charge attack for them to like straight away like destroy uh bypass like the objective team and destroy like the pistol would be along the lines of like the collective planning that they made out of. But like I'm just like in the scenario to be like as like that way like the three of like Asta, as well as like Zora would be like getting making it to bypassing like the opposite team and getting close and like the opposite team by then like would be like time would be like almost pushed by then most likely falling into one of the traps of like Zora. It's like a scenario that are different. So definitely that way like the trio of like Zora as the as well as like Mimosa by stopping like magma as well as sword and like right up like has the will be about to like destroy like still up like the city like at that point I'm just trying like the started showing this like a scenario happening with like Amsterdam and that will last second will be falling unexpectedly falling into like another trap. And at that point, like Mimosa would be totally shocked, and like Mimosa as well. At that point, like it's a trap. Mimosa like Asta would be falling on to be most likely activating another trap. Would be causing like Mimosa as well to like fall into another trap, getting caught in that trap. Like the scenario that happened. And at that point, I was feeling like that absolute betrayal once again by Zora on like Asta and Mimosa would be happening. And like I'm feeling like Zora at that point would like just like William sits smile like slowly in front of like Asta as well as like Mimosa would be totally caught in the trap and will be struggling and will be in shock of that due to like the betrayal once again by the body once again for like the betrayal of like Zora like yeah, that when like Zora in front of them like really laughing while slowly walking towards like still up in the city and once again slowly still up in the city single-handedly by himself and taking all that spotlight while Zora simultaneously like embarrassing and mocking Asta as well as Mimosa once again. It's like the scenario that I'm also on the right and and at that point I'm also bring like Zora in front of like after destroying like this like Zora totally getting this like this person ideology proposing like the ideology of like team of like the nice which like as a videos in like really him like totally at that point like Zora like telling Asta about like his ideology like opposing Asta's ideology with that as well something else makes my and while laughing at like Asta and the most how he talks in like his own Dora from Pratt, which like the engine purpose in that I'm looking at the it is like a mention right now. The legal part of it strategy like Dora made out of the created like clone of like clone version of like Asta might be like the case that we will put it this. So like definitely that clone version of Asta might be what like might be right now chasing after certainly my preparation while like the real Asta might be hiding somewhere else like my preparation that might be part of like the strategic plan which is like Asta alone doesn't have any mana so like definitely things like uh none of them can like or any of us like team members can't detect like Asta through that mana detection like definitely just as part of the strategy might be like one thing that like either like Mimosa or like Zora might have came, most likely Mimosa might have came up with like a strategy and like definitely like definitely I'm still information that like Zora might definitely have like the power to like probably create like clone. It's definitely members. So like that way we might have created like clone of that Aztecs and that clone of Aztec might be like like really right now while we are right now chasing after definitely members. So like definitely while and I'm preparing like the uh, and the game preparing right now for that clone Aztec according to my information that clone Aztec only live quickly that has to live up to like live push towards like the trap towards like an ultimate trap even though a basic trap like towards like a trap that like that like Zora might have already said like from specific locations currently I'm with so like currently I'm looking that way through that clone Aztec enduring like Chris like I'm ending up getting exactly directly falling into that trap and exactly getting caught in that trap. It's like those enough that I'm doing and one like it's really getting caught in like the traps. At that point is when I was next the real after I would be like totally getting consent and basically it would be charged towards like the direction of like uh where like magma and so would be what the still of end of the team and that one is like the scenario that I'm developing. And maybe I'm preferring like since like specifically due to like um due to like Crush's like high and mighty and to lack of the disrupting like the teamwork between like Crush team with like Magma and so on. Like I'm saying maybe by then like Magma might have I'm preferring maybe by then like the scenario then being like Magma maybe the both Magma have plus what by then doing their own thing and basically by then like having charge left there but still behind and charge ahead. It's also like a possibility that I'm so like that way once like after would be the real Aska would be like coming out of its like hiding like the real Aska would have already usually being able to like get past like sort as well as like nightmare. And like first as like the real Aska would be about to that way like would make it to like the crystal and like would be about to explore like the crystal of like the city. At that very last second the real Aska most likely getting caught into that betrayal trap set most likely like uh like Zora and then like Zora slowly like coming out of this hiding and basically would be quickly like this point like the step of like dots. Just like the another the moment. Okay, so like the preemption right now that is me. Zora might have set up like victory traps to be tentative in such a way that like to be easily in such a way while ensuring for to be easily detectable for like might be like using like high level powers might be like pretty active the situation the thing on the brain. So that like basically that way like that those three traps might be like the actual decoy where like after like taking destroying those three traps like as part of the plan of like Zora as well as like Mimosa as well like they might have expected like after taking out those three traps at that point for to only end up into that cave thinking that like the Asta would think that cave was like the real Asta but like that Asta might be definitely a clone and like that's part of like the actual trap like I'm saying like the real Aztec would be like most likely entering into like that cave like from behind Chris one like Chris would be entering into like the cave chasing like the clone Aztec is like the scenario like I'm like so like definitely upper like Chris would be entering into like the cave like the real trap would be setting in with like the real Aztec only entering into that cave and basically like attacking and taking out like Crush from like behind is like the scenario that I was developing and not the ambition right now.